Have you ever considered that some of the beliefs that you're basing your life on, some of the things that have been shaping your life actually aren't true? That's kind of a hard reality to lay hold of. We didn't just wake up and decide to believe these things. They've been shaping slowly in our lives over the years. But some of them are flat out lies. They're false, and we believe them. Could be that they came in through words that were spoken over us, from our parents or a coach or a teacher. It could be that we've had some uh, confusing experiences. And from those experiences, we have made deductions, we have made conclusions that aren't true. And those are, obviously happen a lot when we're young and something happens and we try to figure out what it means. And then we kind of codify that belief in our life, but it's not true. Could be that those things we're trying to make sense of in life, the way we've chosen to make sense of it, they're not true. Those beliefs could be about how we see ourselves. They could be about how we understand God. They could be about how we understand and view people. Are they a threat? Are they safe? Are they fun? Are they for our good? All those kinds of things of how we understand others may be based on things that might not even be true, or even how life works. Again, how life works, cause and effect, where God fits into the picture, who we are, how we relate to others. We have beliefs about all those things. We might not even recognize them. We might even think we have a system of beliefs, but actually what's formed most deeply in our being might be different than that, and it might be based on things that aren't true. The trouble is that lies don't just distort our thinking, they actually shape our decisions, the decisions of our life. Well, what do I mean by those kinds of lies? A lie is something that is false, and the ones I'm talking about are things that are false, but we believe that they're true. The hard thing is, we can't recognize them. They could be things like, I'm not enough. I'll never be enough. I'm small. I'm weak. I'm slow in mind or in physical ability. So I can't really try new things. Do you ever feel like that? Maybe God's disappointed in me, so I need to hide from God, or I need to try harder to please God. If I slow down, I'll lose everything. So I need to just keep going, keep going. Can you feel anything? Sometimes we don't know what we believe, but we can feel it when somebody else says it, if we actually listen. Another kind of false thing that many of us believe is that people will always leave. So it's best not to get too close to them. I pastored in Boston, in the city of Boston, for a long time. And there, often people are there for like 2 years. They're there whether it's for schooling or something to do with the medical field or something to do with technology. There's a lot of people coming in and going through Boston. And so as I was kind of a training pastor, there's people coming in and going out. The tendency, because when you get to know them intimately, like you do in the fellowship of a church, and you're relating on emotional levels and spiritual levels and relational levels, when they move, it can be really painful. So there's the temptation to not relate very closely to them because they always leave. Those are all false ways to perceive life. They're not just thoughts. They become lenses through which we look. But the good news is that as we intentionally enter into kind of a new season, as we enter into wanting to grow in new ways, those can be surfaced and addressed. Well, let's talk for a moment about how we can expose the lies, how we can surface the things that are not true in our life. Well, there's primarily two ways that I want to discuss. First is that God can reveal them to us. And that's an important one. And he reveals them in a couple ways. One, it could be that he reveals them in Scripture. In other words, as we're reading the book, we recognize like, wow, God's truth says this. That's very different than the way I've been perceiving it. That can cause us or tempt us to judge that the scriptures are wrong. We're the ones that are right. That's kind of like the spirit of the day. That's not how it really works. God will use the scriptures to surface truth that might not feel like truth in us that we would need to address. Or it could be that sometimes God will use just himself, the Holy Spirit, to directly illuminate truth to us. That could come through a number of ways. That could come through something we see in a movie. That could come through something we see in nature. That could be something that we're walking down the street and thinking, and all of a sudden our thoughts become clear and truth becomes kind of lucid in our mind. And when that happens, we recognize like, what? What have I been believing? These God surfacing our misunderstanding, our misalignment, our false lens. And so what we want to do, if we recognize that that's one of the two primary ways that I'm going to highlight that God can surface lies in our life, it might change, it needs to change how we come to God. We're not just asking God for things that we want. We're asking God to reveal the truth. We're saying, Lord, show me what is actually true about me, about you, about others, about money, about whatever. We're living a life that we're praying and interacting with God to show us the truth. The other way that we can recognize these false lenses or understandings is from people. God uses people to help us to see clearly. Sometimes it's people that speak to us in truth and in caring love. They expose what is not true and what is possible. They may also exemplify, that can be awesome, that they may expose what's false, speak of what's truth, and or they may exemplify it in a way that makes us say, what? Could be, an illustration could be like, you grow up in a family where there's no conflict that ever happens in your family. And so it becomes like if there's any conflict, tension's in the air and everybody just withdraws. Then you go over to your friend's house and there's a disagreement and they work through it and everybody's happier and there's a sense of resolve. You've never seen that before. That's an example of a different lens, which is a more truthful lens that you didn't know existed. That can give you courage to press into the new kind of way of living. So God uses truth that's spoken in love, or it could be exemplified in a kind of maturity. So again, he can expose things directly or through scripture or through people. What do we do though? How do we, in a sense, overturn or overcome the lies that are in our life? Okay, that's what we're here for really right now. That's what we want. We don't want to be bound in false understandings. We don't want to be living our lives based on lies. We don't want to be living in ways that are actually not true, not according to how life works. There are false kind of coping mechanism. That's what kind of the falseness creates in us. First of all, it's going to require living humbly. And that takes a kind of courage. To live a humble life actually takes courage because it takes courage. It's saying, I'm going to be a grower. I'm going to be somebody who faces what's false in my life. That's a scary kind of process. So first of all, we want to live humbly. And by that, I mean to assume that you don't see everything clearly. Let me say that again. To be humble is to assume you are not always seeing everything clearly. See, growth begins with humility that says, teach me, God, teach me, people, teach me circumstances, because I need to learn. And I will be teachable and I will change. That is humble living. That teachable would be kind of the second step. To be teachable really means that when truth confronts us, when it's a different lens and we start to see that it's truth, we lean into it. We don't just pull back or defend ourselves. No, we lean in to learn and receive. To be teachable means I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to explain it away. I want to learn and I want to change. It's related to humility and teachability. Third is the consistently seeking God's perspective. Relates a little bit to what I was saying before. But by that I mean, again, don't just ask for what you want, ask for what is true. Lord, correct me. What? Why would he correct me? I think I'm doing right. No, you may not be, even when you think you are. Lord, correct me. Show me where I'm misaligned. God, give me concrete ways that I can change. Maybe you should do that when you're young. Maybe you should do that when you're mature. Maybe you should do that for your whole life. Lord, teach me. Show me where I'm wrong. Show me what it looks like to change. Give me courage, the perseverance, and the power to make the change. Another step is to build, this is an important one, build honest, life-giving relationships. Relationships where truth is spoken to each other in love. Grace is present to forgive, to overlook offenses, to talk about them, to grow together. Growth is normal in those kinds of relationships. Here's the thing. Isolation protects lies. Community exposes them. So we're going to really need honest relationships. I'll come back to that in a moment because that's a big one. That's the main thing God's going to use in our lives. Let me talk about it a little bit now. If I believe a lie, and God could convict me, that part if I'm seeking him, I like that. But if somebody comes to confront me with it, to call me out, maybe in arrogance or pride, or to call me out that I was exaggerating, or maybe to call me out that I was shading the truth, any of those kinds of things, when they do, my initial reaction is going to be to defend myself or hide. And I don't want to listen to it because it means my first inclination is if it's true, now I'm going to feel ashamed, like something's wrong with me. However, if you love me and I know you love me, I'll lean in to listen. So those relationships that God's going to use to transform the lies that undergird your life, to bring them to a place of truth so you can stand up in solid truth, need to be relationships that you can experience the love so you will listen. Those are relationships that have sometimes weathered some storms, relationships of respect and mutual honor. Those are really important to build in your life. So let me just kind of mention again, to kind of overturn and overcome the lies that we believe. First of all, live humbly. Secondly, be teachable. Thirdly, consistently seek God's perspective. Fourth, build honest, mutual life-giving relationships. And then the last one that I'll mention is choose mentors or coaches that will help you. Coaches or mentors that are living the way you want to live, the way you want to emulate. Choose those that will carry you into the next season. What I've jotted here is intentionally place yourself under people who embody the freedom and clarity you want. Let me say that again. I'm not just saying like choose good teachers. I'm saying, no, choose people who, when you look at them, whether and what they're doing, it could be the way they're doing their business. It could be the way they're relating in their families. It could be the way they're anything that you want to emulate, and you can see they're somebody that is going where you want to go. So you become like the ones that you consistently receive from. Choose that. Don't just let it happen. Don't let it just be TV shows or people or even, no, choose it and look for where do I want to go and choose that. And I'm suggesting the mutuality of friendship's really important, but then in the development phase, the development things you want to do, whether it's business, life, or spirituality, choose mentors or coaches and choose them well. Here's the good news. The lies that you have learned can be unlearned. They can't be unlearned if you don't recognize them. So that's what I'm saying is we're going to need to have them exposed. We're going to need to be teachable, and then we're going to need to unlearn them. See, the lies that we've learned can be unlearned, but it requires that courage to face them. The courage is going to involve that kind of humility and honesty that sits in the reality of what you've done or what you don't know or what you have to learn. It's going to also require a kind of a consistent engagement with God. The good news is He's a loving Father that wants to help you grow, change, experience life more fully. So you want to consistently put yourself in a engagement with God that actually is transforming you. And it's going to take courageous relationships. See, fruitfulness follows clarity in your life. And that clarity begins with you agreeing what is true and disagreeing and kind of cutting off what's false in your life. Let me land the plane, as I often will describe. First of all, what false understandings or perspectives are God addressing in your life these days? Let me just think of it as one. What false understanding or perspective is God addressing in your life these days? Now, before you run off and just kind of think, well, there isn't really one, I want to say, oh, yes, there is. Because that's what a living relationship with God means, is that you're always growing in some area that He's helping you do. And if you're not, that's not a good sign, my friend. He wants to help you grow. So if there's no area that you're feeling like there's some conviction and falseness that you're needing to come true in, then I want to encourage you, that might be the message of today that says, you're not in a great place spiritually. We sometimes get a false thought that if we're in a great place spiritually, we don't need to change anything. We're doing well. That's not the way it is. A great place spiritually is, here's what God's convicting me of. Here's how I'm becoming like Jesus. Here's an area I'm changing. Here's what I'm praying into. So the first thing I would say is, what understanding or perspective is God addressing in your life? I believe you need to be able to articulate it. If you're not able to, the question would be why? Might be that your spiritual life is not as engaged and alive as you think, or it could be that you've not taken the time to actually make it concrete. I want to help you in that way. Secondly, what are you doing to address that area of change in your life? Knowing it isn't good enough. When God exposes the lie, He wants us to deal with it. He wants us to address it. Not alone. It's not like He gave you a bad grade and says, go fix it. No, He wants to help you, retrain you, renew your mind, restore how you think. He's going to strengthen you in the process. But it isn't just nebulous. You want to recognize, what steps do I need to take to change this? If it is, let's go back to that family that doesn't do conflict. Lord, what do I need to do to change? I need to press in to conflict. I need to speak the truth in my marriage. And when there's some conflict, I need to stand there and not be afraid and not either hide or power over. Instead, learn to do conflict well. That would be a concrete step. Then if I'm with another believer or friend or family, I say, can you pray for me? This is what I'm working on. I'm working on really wanting to handle conflict. It makes me really afraid, or it makes me want to crush my opponent instead of my friend. That as an example, what are you concretely doing to address the falsehood that God has highlighted for you? Thirdly, who are the people that you have invited to speak truth into your life? Could be friends. Could, again, be that mentor or coach. The question is, we may think we have them, but until we can actually name who they are, probably don't. Well, let me make it clear. You don't. So who are those trusted life-giving relators that you've invited to speak into your life, do they know that they have that role in your life? If they don't, it probably isn't real. It's a scary thing. I can remember at a few points, there's some friendships that I've taken that step saying, I would like to, I call them soul friends, soul friendships, and say, I'd like to, at this point, would you be interested in pursuing this kind of soul friendship where we take time intentionally? The ones are often for me like once a month, but they can be more often than that. With my wife, it's actually more than this, but once a week we really give ourselves to this time. And so, you describe it. It'd be like when I'm going through things, I want to have a safe place that I can share. If you see things in my life, I want you to be able to kind of highlight that to me. Mutually, we can both do it. Who are the people? Do they know they have that role in your life? If you don't have anybody, that's a place to start. You pray that God will show you who it could be. But you're going to have to take the initiation. You're going to have to invite them into that relationship. It's a little bit scary. Again, I can help you learn how to do that if you want to. If you have some of those people, do you share the action you are taking? As men, sometimes there's this posture that I see with a lot of men. It's kind of like no news is good news. In other words, I'm doing okay. I'll only talk to you if I'm having a real problem I need to, or if I'm having like some great win. But what we want to do is share like the things we're working on so we can be praying for each other or be corrected along the way. So not only do you have those relationships, are you actually using those relationships? And the last thing, and this is kind of unrelated in some ways, is there anything that God is surfacing in you right now, even as you've been listening to this kind of long teaching, that anything He's surfacing that you need to pay attention to and take action? It might not be very related to exactly what I've been sharing, and that's kind of because God often does some subterranean work because we're opening ourselves to learn from Him. And when we do that, sometimes He's bringing in some other things that are related, tangential, or maybe even completely different. Take a moment. What's God highlighting in your life that He wants you to address? Could be something, again, about a lie or a false belief that you have, or it could be something else. But take a moment. Is there anything He wants you to make concrete and take action on? I encourage you to do it. If there's any way I can be of help, that's why I'm on the planet. Have a great day. Keep pursuing God. Let Him, you and Him together, stomp the lies out. Embrace the truth and walk in joy. Have a great day. Bye-bye.